So a question we get a lot of people ask us questions about this is career stuff. When it comes to playing piano or playing any instrument as a career, it's always tough, I guess, because there aren't too many options, I'd say, in terms of, there aren't too many spaces in every symphony orchestra, you know.
Especially for pianos.
Oh my God. But when it comes to classical versus jazz, what are the career paths and what are the differences?
That's a tough one. You know, what I was encouraging you to do before you went for your jazz major in conservatory was get as many degrees as you can, because hopefully you could find a school where you could teach, and better than that, do some concertizing, but get some kind of recognition, because once you have a title with the doctor in front of your name and some level of accomplishment, at least you're going to make a living. And that's really what most classical pianists and other instrumentalists do primarily, is teach. Even people here in Orange County, the Pacific Symphony, which has, does wonderful things, great orchestra, magnificent hall, and yet the job doesn't pay enough to live in Orange County. It's right. Not a full-time position. So everybody, and here's a county of 3 million people, that's the best job here, and it's not enough to support yourself. So teaching is a mainstay, and then one of the things, teaching, writing, and
I was
playing.
going to mention.
Yeah, tell this. This is a really good story.
Yeah, so
Advice, I should say.
I'll get back to kind of the differences in the two career paths, if there are differences later.
JR?
But JD, yeah.
JD, all right. Close.
I was going to say Justin DiCoccio, again, from the Manhattan School of Music, impresses this on us as far as making a living with jazz, but I think this applies to music in general, even with classical musicians or whatever type of musician you aspire to be. The complete artist. The complete artist
right.
is one who, 1, performs, 2, teaches, and 3, writes. His philosophy is, in particular with jazz, anybody who's followed this path has made a living. And every single jazz artist you want to name, Herbie Hancock, or Wayne Shorter, or whoever, John Riley, who teaches at the Manhattan School of Music, actually. They all do some kind of performing, some kind of teaching, and some kind of writing.
And in the classical world, you find much the same thing.
Right, and it doesn't have to be 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 split. At a certain point in your career, maybe the performing is, going really well and you're touring, and that's taking the majority of your time, and you kind of put the teaching and the writing on the back burner. Sometimes it may be the teaching that's bringing you in the bread. You could have a university position. You could be teaching privately. You could be teaching master classes. You could be teaching in any number of ways. And writing doesn't just mean composing, but you could be writing articles. You could be doing any number of things in the field of writing, arranging.
That's great advice right there,
Yeah.
to diversify. And I'd go even one step further in that people who are successful in music careers tend to be versatile. It's a sad fact that so many people who go to conservatories are all vying for the same limited positions in orchestras
Right.
and competitions, international competitions for pianists and soloists, of which there are just a handful of people who win each year out of literally thousands of people who are qualified in the strictest sense of the word. But if you can do more than one thing, then you exponentially increase your odds of having a career in music.
Right. If you're asking about the differences between classical and jazz, I don't really see them as much differences as much as there's a certain amount of opportunities or work that's out there. And it seems that the jazz musicians seem to grasp the idea of versatility more so than the classical musicians.
This is true. I have told you the story of one of my father's students who he had her from a very young age, and she progressed very well, and she ended up going to Juilliard and got a degree in piano performance, studying with one of the top teachers there, Sasha Gornitsky. She went on to do graduate work, and she was in the middle of her master's program, and there was a party at her house, and it was in my dad's studio. it was a birthday party, and at a certain point, my dad said, and I won't say the name in case of the unlikely event she's listening, it's been decades, but he said, play Happy Birthday. And here's this very accomplished pianist at Juilliard graduate, and what note does it start on? And she could not play Happy Birthday by ear.
Yeah.
And I fault to some extent the curriculum of schools that are so incredibly laser focused that, for example, at the Manhattan School of Music, where I also went years ago, we learned how to read figured bass. But you know what they don't ever teach? How to read a lead sheet. And then as soon as you get out of school, the only performing work other than accompanying that you're going to get paid for involves a lead sheet, being able to play with a chord chart so that you can collaborate with musicians who maybe aren't schooled or are playing more popular forms of music. I don't know if things have changed much. The fact that there's such a vibrant jazz program at the Manhattan School of Music now, they had one then, but even Juilliard has a jazz program now.
I wish they would do more to merge or close the gap.
Yeah, you have to
between
make
the
a
two.
choice, don't you?
Right, you have to either laser focus on the classical program or laser focus on the jazz program, which I think is unfortunate because I don't think they should separate it as two, because it's really art music versus popular music, as you like to say. So I think they should make it such that we can concentrate on both and focus
Wouldn't
on
that
both.
be in a perfect world? But people getting classical music degrees aren't exposed to anything except classical music.
Yeah, I mean, it's the classical program is great, but it's also unfortunate that it's not as diverse as it could be. But being able to adapt to different environments, I think, is the major theme as far as work. And I'd say
And technology. In this day and age, and even years and years ago, I was always into recording technology when it was reel-to-reel tape, and having that, it was a big thing. For years, I had a recording studio, and it was a way that I could, get work that was musically related.
I mean, some of the different things I've been called for work-wise, at least in the jazz field, performance-wise and working with other musicians, expands on such a humongous range. I mean, you can go from really straight-ahead stuff, playing jazz standards in a traditional sense, or I could be sight reading these modern meter changing, metric modulation, changing keys with a bunch of rhythmic hits. So sight reading is also something you have to be good at, being a sensitive accompanist. And this can apply in both classical music accompanying opera singers and being able to feel them and feel where they're going with time, because they're not always the best at that, as we know.
Well, there are, of course, traditions of places where liberties are taken, and then people who are opera aficionados know where those places are. That's why people specialize in opera accompanying.
Right.
But some people take it pretty extreme.
Yeah. And then with jazz horn players, for example, tenor sax players or trumpet players, knowing what kind of accompanist they want. Do they want somebody to feed them ideas? Do they want somebody to just provide a groove? Do they want somebody in between? So being sensitive to...
And in the classical world, it's the same thing. There's nothing worse than having an accompanist who follows, because following is not what it's about. It's about collaborating. It's a give and take. And a great accompanist, you'll come up with things you never thought you would come up with on your own. It's a whole new experience.
Yeah.
So
anyway, we got kind of off topic. But
No.